know about yourselves. Okay, so why don't we start with Walter Schofield at the end over there.
Oh, sure. Start with me, thanks. I'm Walter Schofield with Krell Industries. I save the world from bad sound. That's basically what we try to do. I've been in this business since I've been 16 years old, and I love it. I've not worked a day in my life. Love it, love it, love it. Something about me that you don't know? I don't know. I love wristwatches. I like wine, and I love audiophiles that spend lots of money on hi-fi.
Angela?
Hi, my name is Angela Cardas. I am from Cardas Audio. I've been in this industry 35 years, since I was 9. And then one of the questions was, how did you get into this industry? And birth. I didn't have a choice. I did not have a choice in the matter. I was, the only child living at home when my dad got this started out of our garage. So I was the official A/B comparison person for a very long time, and I still am. Something people might not know about me. In 1989, I competed in the Nintendo Championships of America. I came in first in my age bracket in Los Angeles County, and I still love video games, and I really am not very good about restricting screen time for my 12-year-old because it worked out fine for me. So.
And Angela has great videos of her husband playing the guitar too. I love that.
My husband's an awesome guitarist.
So here's the thing I sent Myles. I said, Jeff Joseph is the president and founder of Joseph Audio. Despite his youthful good looks, he has been actively involved in the audio industry for 40 years. Prior to founding Joseph Audio, he worked in retailing, holding several positions from sales manager to merchandising for Harvey Electronics in New York. And so that's my that's my experience.
Okay, I'm glad everybody went for a very short time. Now I can take about 20 minutes to tell you about myself. So I'm Michael Fremer. Since 1986, I've been a very strong advocate for digital audio. It's the COVID kidding. I actually got COVID. I got COVID NQA. You get COVID and it unfolds diphtheria in the body. It's a terrible thing. No, so I write for Sterophile magazine, and I have a website called Analog Planet. And I'm all about vinyl, and I also have digital audio. I'm not against it. It's gotten much better. If what we get now in digital audio was what we got in 1986, I wouldn't have been on my high horse about it. So it's much better now. What else could you know about me? I wrote an animated feature film called Animal Olympics, which you could watch on Amazon Prime right now, I think. So the voices were Gilda Radner, Billy Crystal, Harry Shearer, and me. And now they've all drifted off into obscurity. Now I'm a big star. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So Angela kind of started on it, but I always find kind of interesting. We all came from different backgrounds, and for different reasons we got into audio. I think, most of us probably started either before. College was a big wave we entered into it. Angela obviously had a little different way. So maybe we can start with Walter and just quickly, how did you get started with your interest in high-end audio as a hobby or as the industry?
I've always been a music guy. My dad, when he got paid on Friday, would bring me home 245 records every Friday. I had a little Decca record player when I was 3. I still have it. It's in my garage. When I was 11 years old, I had amassed almost $3,000. Birthday money. I did a triple paper route, and I talked my dad it took me 6 months into going and buying a stereo. I bought a big Sansui receiver, a couple of pairs of KLH speakers that I stacked up in the bedroom, a Pioneer turntable, a microacoustics cartridge, and I was just the audio guy ever since that point.
How old were you?
I was 11 years old when I did that, yeah. And I was always the audio guy. When my friends had parties, I'd bring my system over. We'd set it up on the lake up in New Hampshire somewhere. When I was 15 years old, I went to a Radio Shack asking about the TRS-80 back then. I went to the audio department, and the manager of the store came over and said, "You know more about audio than my audio manager does. Why don't you come sell hi-fi?" So at 15 years old, I was selling stereo at Radio Shack. Right. About a year later, I ventured across the street to Tech Hi-Fi. where they said, "What are you doing selling stereo at Radio Shack?" So I went to Tech Hi-Fi, and I spent many years there as a retail sales guy. Got into the manufacturing side with Cambridge Soundworks, which started up in Boston. I was the number 3 sales guy. I eventually became the product manager and the purchaser of branded goods. After that, I had my first manufacturing job at Lynn Products in Scotland, national sales manager. Went on to run Mark Levinson after they closed the factory to re-establish Mark Levinson worldwide. And now here I am at Krell doing the same thing, re-establishing an iconic brand. Shameless plug, see us in Schaumburg D, check out our new amp.
Like I said, it's one of those things where audio's always been a part of my life. And when I was a kid, one of my favorite memories is the thing I loved to do was go to Tower Records with my dad, and we would look through albums, and I would pick out the one I wanted. And when I was in 8th grade, my dad bought me for Christmas the 4-pack of the Led Zeppelin remastered, the box set thing, and I was like the coolest 8th grader in town for like a week, and it was awesome. And it's just a lot of these things, like a lot of memories I have with my dad go back to music. They don't go back to the stereo itself, the actual electronics or the cables or whatever. It's not that, it's listening to the music and what I was listening to. So the Judds and Willie Nelson and the Highwaymen and all these things that, the AV comparison of the cables, yeah, that was a big part of it, but it was also the music, and it was also the time spent doing that. The albums I would buy, one of the albums I wanted when I was a teenager was Van Halen, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. And my dad looked at me and he says, "Do you know what that means?" I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, you can get it then." So, of course, there's no Google back then, so it took me a while, but.
You know now.
All right, so the die was cast at an early age. My parents had a Garrard record changer. It wasn't working. And I, being about maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time, had a simple solution. Clearly, what was wrong with this turntable or record changer, whoever you call it, the problem was that it had been spinning this way for so long, it was all wound up. So I spun it the other way, and you know what? It worked. And thus began my career in audio.
Well, so my father had an office downtown Manhattan, and we would walk down Cortlandt Street before the World Trade Center was built. That's how long ago this was. And all the stereo stores on Radio Row were there. So I would pass by Rabson's and what were the other stores that were down there? Harvey Radio. All the great stores were right on that street. And I would look in the window and see the Macintosh and the Marantz and the H.H. Scott and all those things and Ico. And that was like eye candy to me. And plus we were all into music in my house. And so it was all about music. It really wasn't about the gear so much. And then I got my first Dynakit and I built it myself. And then I got I made my father buy me a pair of AR2AX speakers. And because I heard bass at a friend's house. There was no bass. You couldn't hear bass back in the 1950s. You had little portable radios. Maybe you heard bass during school when you went to the auditorium and there was an actual live orchestra, but there was no bass to be heard on record players or anything. So when my friend's father got a Macintosh system and I heard that for the first time, it was like, I gotta have that. And that's how I got started with it. But
And I might add as a trivia where Rabson's is, there's a plaque on the building, that's where Columbia University was first established. There's a little plaque saying King George, I think was the 3rd, established Columbia here, like 1763 or something.
I also learned about retailing at that point because I went to every store to ask how much they would want for the Dynaco SCA35 kit. And it was $80 at every place, $80. One place it was $72. I said, I'll take it. He goes, hey, you got any of those SCA35s back there for $72? No, we don't have any. We have them for $80. So that's how I learned about retailing.
Yeah, it was interesting times. Just as a quick, I won't go into all of mine, but my favorite was I kind of got interested in college and graduated and learned about the absolute sound by walking into a store. But it was about 1980, and my ex-wife and I, she used to write for Sterophile. we moved into our first apartment, bought our first real high-end system, pair of Dalquist DQ10s, and that's all we had in the apartment. We had no furniture, nothing, just the DQ10s, and she threatened that unless we got furniture, she was gonna turn the DQ10s, and those of you who remember them, knew she was gonna turn them on their side and use them as a coffee table, so that
Which makes sense. Makes
she
sense.
gets some furniture. Angie just came in, so let me just quickly backtrack. Angie, if you could just quickly just give us a little introduction about yourself, and then we'll go on to the next question. That'd be great. So
Sure, I've been in the industry for 45 years, in retail and in distribution. Distribution came about because a lot of the high-end toys that I wanted weren't available in Canada, so I ended up becoming by default a distributor, and that's going back maybe 35, 40 years. Till today, I still do both, loving every minute of it, and it's great to see all kinds of people here.
thank you, Angie.
Thank you.
I've known Angie since probably the late 90s when, yeah, she was really well known for bringing American equipment into Canada. And she actually brought a friend of mine's equipment in at that time. We made a digital player. That's how I first knew her. And I think, didn't you get a Lifetime Achievement Award at a recent
I
show?
did, yes, yeah. That was a
Congratulations.
Canadian one, now we'll wait for a US one.
So just to quickly backtrack before we get into a little bit more about the subject, you know, because I always love these little tidbits here and there. So, I guess us old timers, we like to reminisce and stuff. So what were your fondest memories of the early days when you first got into audio, and what do you miss the most about those days? I think that's an interesting question.
Well, I think one of the things I miss is that the retail environment has really deteriorated, especially in the metropolitan area, for a number of reasons. I mean, the first thing is the rents are so high, it's very difficult to have a store in Manhattan or even in the peripheral areas. And then there's the internet interference in that. And so it's very difficult to go to a stereo store to hear equipment. I think some stores are opening again, but that's the thing I miss the most, is be able to go. There was a Macintosh dealer. I live in White Cove, New Jersey, which is a suburb. There was a Macintosh dealer down the block from my house when I first moved in there. There's nothing anymore, any place close by. So I miss that.
Okay. Jeff?
I actually managed the store
Really?
not far from the dealer in Wyckoff, Harvey store in Paramus
Yeah.
on
Nice to
17.
go there too.
Yeah. So there used to be a social element to audio where you would buy an album and then you could take it to your friend's house and you could share in that. And that, I don't, you can replicate that on the internet, with streaming services. You can create playlists, you can share that among your friends, and so that part of it, but it's not the same thing as
Kids are doing that again, though.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
they are doing that, because I go hang out with these kids, and their friends come over, and they sit together, and they play records, and it's happening again.
Okay.
That's a great thing.
well, it's a great thing. It's
We're all
something that
old. We don't have friends anymore.
Apparently, it's,
When you get together with your
maybe
friends,
it's just
you get together with friends at our age, you know what they talk about? Their diseases, what occupations they had, and then maybe later, music sucks now, let's get back to playing Mahjong or whatever they do.
I did, by the way, go up some years ago. I took a trip up to Angie's store. I was invited up there for she was having a gathering at her store, and it was snowing like crazy. And
It was in June?
yes, it was in June.
It wasn't snowing the stuff you think.
And Angie, not only did she have the most food I've ever seen in one spot anywhere, which is always wonderful to see, but she rented a piano, and Basson was there performing for, the maybe 10 or 12 of us who actually made it through the snow. So anyway, I always think of that.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have a strong opinion on anything I miss entirely, but I tell you, the last 2 years have really made me appreciate this. I am a complete extrovert. I'm renewed by interacting with people, and you know, I just kind of came up on Facebook the other day, you know, check on your extrovert friends, they're not okay, right? Like 2 years ago, right? So this is what I miss. Like, I think about CES when in the good old days. I was 13 when I went, and I didn't look 13, so I had a great time. And it was one of those things where it was fun, you know. The Sterophile was the party was legendary, and you know, if you got to go to that, it was super cool. And you know, I think that we've turned these shows and really day-to-day life of high-end audio into this sludge, you know, trudge, whatever. Day-to-day, it's a business now, it's hard, and what are you gonna do to this, and what are you gonna do to that? And you know, I think we've discovered in the last 2 years what we miss, and people are what we miss. And so that goes back to, you know, making listening social again. And you know, we live in a town of 3,000, right? And between the people who work at Cardas Audio, we probably have all of the high-end audio that is in Bandon, Oregon at our houses. And we really do invite people over. Like, people don't get what we do. Like, what is it that you do? Cables? What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what does that do? And I'm like, come over. Like, come over. Pick your favorite song you've ever heard. Your very favorite song in the whole wide world, and I will play it for you, and you will hear it differently. And people get it. You know, I've heard that song for 30 years, and I've never heard that background vocal over there. It's right there. You know, I've never heard that, you know, saxophone line quite the same way, and you could tell he's standing right over there, and it's just like this wide opening thing. And instead of making it this private club or this mafia or whatever you want to call this little thing that we're all involved in, it's like, open it up. Like, invite people to your house. You know, if it's headphones, let them listen to your headphones.
You're getting ahead. We have a
I know, I'm sorry.
That's really good.
I'm sorry. I miss people. That's what I miss.
Walter.
I'm going to pick up where she left off. Headphones. I missed the educational aspect of it. I miss being back in retail in the 70s and having people come in and turning them on to sound. You know, I miss creating future audio files. When you think about it, you know, the late 50s, 60s, 70s, that's when everybody had a hi-fi in their home. Even my grandmother, who had plastic on her sofa, and on her lampshades and runners, you know, in the living room, had a stereo in her living room. Everybody had a hi-fi. It was a thing. And what happened is gaming, and believe it or not, the computer came about. Whereas college kids purchased systems, made music, created music, consumed music, the computer came about. And I don't know about you, I bought a computer in 1983. It cost me $2,600 for a 60 meg hard drive and a keyboard and a screen. Enter the age of the boombox for these college kids, right? And we have generations lost of people who have not been messaged that these experiences can be had in their home. We're audiophiles, we know it, right? People in this room, we know it. But think about the general populations and the generations lost that think that a sound bar and a pair of headphones is the end all be all. We need to message these folks, and that's, I'm sure, a future question. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But in reality, that's to me, I miss the good old days of education and bringing people up through the ranks and having fun with them listening to music. I used to go home with my customers and we'd listen to music and do other things, but I can't talk about that. But that's what I miss the most, is educating people to move them ahead from one step to the next in their search for better sound.
This question's about what I miss, right?
Well, miss, or what were your thoughts?
Okay, I miss being 20. And I miss being 20 and naive at an audio show and walking the corridors and just being blown away with every room I went into. I miss being introduced to the big guys that looked at me and said, you know, here I am with braces at 20 years old, 21 years old, and taking me seriously and talking to me. There were not a lot of people who did that, but two of the people that did, that I will remember forever, is Jeff Rowland and Dave Wilson. When I walked into the room, it was, I believe, at the McCormick show, when they used to have it at the McCormick Center. And I walked into this room. So remember, I'm 21 or 2 with braces, and I look like I'm 12 years old. And I said, I love this room, I'm gonna buy this room after the show. Yeah, right. I miss that innocence. I did buy the room. I did drive it back in my Magic Wagon Caravan. You know, and left my seat with Jeff Rowland, which I'm sure he could tell you the story. Those are the naivety times that I miss. I wish that customers would be approached in a retail with, yes, I am interested. Maybe he doesn't look like he's going to buy this item for $50,000, but that's been a life journey for him. It's not his first kick at the can. So I think that the audio community needs to be looking at a customer in the same way that I was looked at. And I think with that, our industry has a major chance of huge survival, and not looking at, here's the negative side, looking at a product as a commodity on what profit margin do I make on this? And I'll sell them this one because I make 10 bucks more. So I think I need to see more innocence and more attentiveness, and not disrespect somebody because he doesn't have gray hair. Because the gray hair guy's gonna have a bankroll. Well, wait a second. We need to cultivate the young person, the young entrepreneur. I mean, let's face it, 25, 30-year-old kids are making a whole lot of money than we would ever dreamed of when we were 20. So I think we need to get current with the times, with the person, and identify with each individual.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo pretty much what everybody here has said. My fondest memory was every Sunday morning, there was a group of us, Sid Marks, who wrote for the Absolute Sound, and about 7 or 8 people. When we got together every Sunday morning and listened to music, we drove or took the train to Brooklyn from Manhattan, and that was, one of my fondest memories. I, to this day, consider Sid my mentor. And I think the thing that I miss the most is the enthusiasm. Used to go and couldn't wait till the new issue of the Absolute Sound arrived in the mail to rip it open and read it. I think we need to kind of look at how do we recapture that enthusiasm. Okay, so let's jump ahead a little bit to present day, and let's just talk about the pandemic. We talked about how companies reinvented themselves, and even in terms of reviewers, like we like to have, with certain products, manufacturers like to come over and set it up, and that even changed during the pandemic. So if everybody can tell me, are there certain things you guys did during the pandemic to kind of reinvent, grow your business, and be successful?
Well, when you run an online website, it's a lot easier because you're at home and you're there anyway. And when you review equipment for a living in your home anyway, not much changes. The big thing that changes, my wife now works at home, and she used to go into an office every day, and her office is now right upstairs from my listening room. So, when I play it loud, she comes down, she just stamps on this, tells me where she comes down and she goes, "Young man, I can't hear myself think, please turn it down." And I'm saying, this is my wife, this is not my mother? Okay, maybe the same thing. But not much has changed really for me, because I let manufacturers come over and set up equipment. We're very careful about being masked. And I had speaker installations and other equipment installations, and I just was careful about keeping my distance. But nothing changed for me essentially.
Jeff?
So, when the pandemic began, the big question for me was trying to forecast the business and trying to figure out, what does this mean for Joseph Audio? Should I be ordering deeper? Should I be ordering lighter? These were really the questions, and my decision at that time was to order deeper. And actually that turned out to be a really good decision, because we were able to supply all the way through. And eventually the supply chain troubles did catch up with us, and now we have a wait. But during that period of time, we were able to keep the supply going. There was more interaction with customers, more questions to answer, because people were really not going to dealerships, not going out of the house. And so we needed to try to reach out to people and communicate better. And I think I did an okay job there. I think I could have done better, but it's kind of hard. You get spread in a lot of different directions.
Our biggest change was we were home. So going to these trade shows, my husband and I pretty much go to every show. So we're gone a week to 2 weeks out of every month, had been, and are getting back into that now. But we were home, so we were at the office every single day, and so we tried to find ways that were make ourselves more useful. And Josh started double checking orders, and I started what we call hyper personalization. And basically, I basically write a note card that says, you know, from the desk of Angela Cardas with an ad or something on the back that I send to almost every single box that goes out our door. So you got a card? I do. I write so many. And the thing is, it always comes back. I mean, it's the personalizing, it's the getting to know people. You know, they'll I'd say probably 60% of the cards I send out, someone sends me back an email and tells me about their system, or asks me a question about what they could change next, or whatever. And it's just that foot in the door of communication, that we're not just we don't sell direct, however we do drop ship. So it's our connection to those end customers that I do not have a sales connection with them, but they have a personal connection with us and our company. And so that's been the biggest change for us from the last 2 years.
A Cardas t-shirt.
We did. We had a shirt at the very beginning that my husband Josh designed, and it was called "Stay Home and Listen to Music." And it was a red shirt, a very simple graphic on the front, and we sold them for $20, and 100% of the proceeds, not even proceeds, 100% of the money we took in for those shirts, we donated back to our community. So we donated gift cards to servers at the restaurants. We have a caddy program with 350 caddies who were out of work for 2 months when Bandon Dunes closed. I think we ended up giving back about, $15,000, $20,000, something in that regard. But that's 100% due to our customers. Steve Gutenberg wore one in one of his reviews, and all of a sudden we had 100 orders. So it was really, really cool how that came together.
Walter?
So, I don't think it's any secret that Krell had a little bit of a down period for a few years, but when I joined the company, the first thing we did was we put together a business plan, and unfortunately that plan was interrupted by this pandemic, and we're back on it now. But our sales went through the roof. We had growth in 2019, again in 2020. At the end of 2021, we did more business in 3 months than we did in the 7 or 8 months the year prior, and it was a growth year, so we had a lot of growth. But the real big thing was having the time to step back and look at our business, look at it from our infrastructure perspective, servicing, customer service, manufacturing, the production, operations, and fine-tune our business plan, which we are right now since the pandemic. Let's hope we're kind of in the last phase. Let's hope we're starting to implement. I mentioned before shamelessly that we have a new amplifier here. That amplifier was supposed to be an anniversary amplifier introduced in 2020, right? And we even talked about it. But we were so busy that our engineering staff was in production. That's how busy we were. We had to move all of our engineering staff to make product. And so we had a little bit of an issue there. Currently, we're certainly experiencing the digital chip shortages everybody else is. 95% of our line is shipping within the usual just-in-time period, but this chip situation is for real. So people waiting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, it's happening to everybody if it's got a digital chip in it. So if you're pressuring your dealer to find something for you in a week, it ain't gonna happen. That's pretty much it.
And Angie, because you have a store and importer, so you were really clobbered.
I think my view of it will be a lot different than a manufacturer's view. I think that I can say that Yes, we got a lot more telephone calls, so we had great conversations. We got a lot more emails, so we had nice communication that way. But I'll tell you one thing I think why the industry has increased is because people who were locked in at home, they did and had the opportunity to research what they thought they wanted to buy. So they could more than identify with what they were purchasing, communicate with either the supplier or their favorite retailer. So we've seen an increase across the board in sales in just about every aspect of the audio industry. Manufacturing, of course, because the customer wanting that. One of the things, customer calls me up and says, Angie, I just want you to know, I've survived COVID because of my audio system. It made them reassess, reevaluate what is closer to their heart and what is important in the music and how the music can stimulate them and give them a more positive energy in life so they could face COVID for however long it's going to take. But that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like everybody else out there, no one knew what Zoom was before the pandemic, and all of a sudden everybody learned what Zoom was, and I think there were a couple of the audio societies, like the New York Club, that put together a really successful series every month of Zoom meetings. I think Walter was on one of them, and, you know, there were a number of other people, and that also, I think, really helped. You know, you didn't have to be there in person to really talk about audio, so that was really, you know, nice.
And we all learned how to use Zoom.
Yeah. So let's go talking a little bit about our industry and genuflecting. And what do you think that the industry has done the best to promote itself? And what do you think is one thing that we can definitely improve on in terms of promoting audio?
I don't think the audio industry promotes itself at all. It doesn't. It doesn't advertise. It doesn't reach out to other communities as well as it should. Usually what you end up seeing is product placement in TV shows and movies. That's fantastic, but that only happens because the set designers or the directors or the people that are making the movies are audio fans themselves, and they call up the companies and say, I want to put a turntable in this ad. I mean, there are turntables all over the place now in ads for everything. And so that's great, but that's not from our industry going out and doing that. That's from the people in other industries coming to us, which is great advertising, but it's not us doing much of anything. And I just want to say that turntables have really helped promote our industry. And for those of you who don't know this, yesterday, GZ Media announced that they were building a big pressing plant in Nashville, Tennessee, a big one that they've invested in. And that United Record Pressing in Nashville is adding 48 presses, and Memphis Record Pressing in Memphis is doubling the size of their facility, and so the supply of records is going to go up tremendously now, and that whole supply chain is going to be dealt with. But most of what our industry gets in terms of promotion comes from other industries coming to us to borrow our stuff. We don't really go out. I think it's a problem, but I don't think we go out and promote ourselves strong enough. So people that don't like us are all over the internet saying bad things about us, and how it's all snake oil. There are even audio things on Facebook where we're called snake oil and horrible, and you know, I got into it first time I went on Facebook, Audiophiles North America. I said, let me see what this is all about. So I went on there, and someone was saying, what, I need to buy speaker cables, what should I get? So somebody came back and said, here's all you need, and it was Amazon Basic speaker cables, which is lamp cord packed in a spool. And I said, how much do you think the guy that is packaging and selling this knows about resistance, impedance, and all the, and you know, and inductance? How much do they know? The guy comes and says, you don't know anything about it. You know nothing about this subject. You're old, you're deaf, and you have a shitty room. That was my introduction to Audiophiles North America. What did I do? Anyway.
So I think we're at our best when we're talking about how this listening to great equipment or great performances makes us feel. There's a huge library of recordings by artists whom we can only experience through this medium, through recorded sound. So having something that gives us a more intimate connection to that, to me, that's exciting. To me, being able to wave my magic wand and bring somebody back to life and hear their art is just, that's the magic.
Yep.
So I think that is something that everybody, if they get the opportunity to experience it, that would excite them. So I think that's what we need to do more of in
You
terms
have
of.
visitors over to your house that are there for some other reason.
Yeah.
You can bring them down, say, listen to this, check this out.
Sure.
Yeah, and then they're always
Sure.
amazed. They're always amazed.
Yes, yes. They're a little intimidated, they're a little scared about it. I mean, the things that we don't do well is that we can be very elitist, we can be snobs. We can, we're divided up into all these little encampments of, here are the horn guys, here are the panel guys, here are the cone guys, and speaker, and that's just speaker land. In electronics, we have the solid state guys, we have the tube guys, we have the single and the triode guys. We're all into interest. We kind of latch on to different facets of sound, and that's fine. I mean, we can have individual perception of what it is that brings us closer to the music that we love. But when you're trying to engage with somebody who is outside the cult, we need to have that aha moment for them. So I think that's what we should be doing.
I think we definitely need to reach out into different venues. I think, and again, I'm as guilty of this as anybody, we keep advertising in the same magazines, we keep going to the same private groups on Facebook, we keep going to the same things where we're in this echo chamber. And one of the things that I got so many people into hi-fi in the 70s was Playboy, right? So Playboy magazine advertised how cool hi-fis were, and had the guy with the hot chick and the stereo system, right? And a martini, right? Like it's you can't just keep yelling at each other, right? Like we all know what the message is. And I think we've done a great job of that, of getting out there in different spaces. So Reels and TikTok and all of these things that are hard to get started with. Like Angie said, Zoom. I didn't know what the hell Zoom was 3 years ago. And we learned how to use it and we used it effectively, and now we got to move on to the next thing. And you need to branch out, and you need to, in person is great. Obviously, I love that too, but my own friends don't know what we do, right? Like my own people that I know in my community, and you see how many pictures do I post, and it's not accidental that I take a lot of pictures in my living room, and it could be my son playing Legos, it could be a cute picture of my dog, whatever, but my system's in the background. And the Jeff Joseph speakers are right there, and the Grand Prix turntable, and all of the things that I have, which Cardas Audio bought for me. I did not pay for that stuff. So I can proudly say, look at my awesome system, and I don't feel like I'm bragging, right? Like these are connections that I'm very lucky to have, but it's my stereo, it's in my living room, and people see it and they're like, well, what is that? What's that thing? And what's that do? And whatever, and it starts a conversation. But I just think we just can't keep talking to each other in these closed environments. I think you really have to reach out.
Walter, I know Walter has some very strong opinions on this.
Very strong opinions about everything. I mentioned before, about the dealers educating customers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And unfortunately, most of the dealers that we have out there are now focused on selling high-end gear. They don't tend to want to sell entry-level equipment anymore and educate customers and bring them up through the ranks. But the fact is that this generation, the younger generations, are in fact seeking these experiences. The last years that we had figures for, that came from the CEA, I think it was from 2018, maybe 2017 to 2018. We had predicted that movie ticket sales would go away because people were streaming in their homes, but they doubled in the USA. People bought twice the amount of movie tickets in 2018 than they did in 2017. Concert ticket sales doubled as well. Electronic dance music went up by almost 280 to 300%. Young people are seeking experiences like this because they don't know, they're not aware that they're available in their home. It's that simple. Angela hit some very, very good points in terms of what we need to do about it. You know, we need to re-engage audiophiles through demonstration. We need to take these dealers who are focused on trying to sell high-end to everybody who walks in and re-educating customers, talking to them, bringing them from AirPods to headphones, from headphones to a little streaming integrated amplifier with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. From there, maybe to a home theater system, you know, or maybe a home theater system after the headphones. Then you move them through like we did back in the old days, generation to generation to generation. You know, people didn't buy $20,000 speakers in the 1970s. They bought Dahlquist DQ10s and Snell Type A's, and you know, speakers that were back then $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It wasn't really until the 80s, you know, where we saw a little bit of a dot-com bubble where people really started buying expensive components. So we need to re-engage them in that way, bring them to the next level, and then we not only re-engaging audiophiles, but we need as an industry, and Angela touched upon this as well, we need to break out to high net worth individuals. Somebody else, I think Angie mentioned about people that have income at, you know, really, really young ages. So we need to branch into people who read magazines with jet shares and wine and watches and skiing and, you know, expensive real estate and all that. It's not just the audiophiles like us. If we could just take 1% of the high net worth individuals and message them that this is available, and we could take 1% of people who care about immersive experiences in their home that don't have a lot of money, they're gonna get into this. They're gonna want to try to get something better than what they have. We need to go back to the early days. We also need the dealers to re-engage. In their metro micropolitan markets, they don't market themselves anymore. I used to walk through Harvard Square and there was a dozen hi-fi dealers, right? Tweeter, etc., Sound Advice, Tech Hi-Fi, Music Systems Limited, Hi-Fi Buys, Atlanta Sound, Audio Lab, all of these places. There's one, and the college kids were, all of these stayed in business. We have come full circle. It's time we do it again. It's time we educate people out there, audiophiles, high net worth individuals alike, and maybe hopefully get some younger people to start opening up shops where they can demonstrate this. Pretty much all I got.
Angie.
I'm gonna read what I wrote, my first thought when I got the question, and I'll follow it up. Make the cost of entry more inclusive. Everyone needs a starting point. Not many 20-year-olds can afford to get into this hobby. That's where the next generation of audio enthusiasts will come from. And without them, there is no industry 20 years down the road. What I thought about when I wrote that is, if you ask most of the people on the panel and the gray-haired people, when did you first start getting into audio and what was your interest? You get the average answer is 14, 15 years old. I had a paper route, I wanted a turntable, I wanted an amplifier, and I saved up for it. That's the beginning of the journey. So as much as I'm exposed to high end and everything, we need to take care of that 20-year-old. They would never start this industry because they don't even know we exist. They know about high-end cars, high-end watches. I mean, I'm repeating myself over and over, but where is that 14-year-old that says, I really wanted to get that turntable I heard?
But vinyl is doing that now. Vinyl is the upsurge in vinyl and turntable sales.
I hate to tell you, and I love you, Michael, you know that. Analog is an endpoint for us gray hair.
That's not true.
No, wait a second, let me tell you my perspective. And I love vinyl, you know that, I have tons of it. But we can't count on just vinyl, because the truth is the young people are streaming everything. This is their audio system. We need to make them aware that, no, there's more to this than the speaker you might plug into them. There is more to it. And unfortunately, it's not playing a record, it's streaming. Streaming music and making them available to all kinds of music. Look, since streaming started and I've embraced it with expensive DACs and all of that, okay, fine. But I have explored a new library of music that I didn't even know existed.
Right, it's a great
Because I
thing.
have the same 10 records, and the same 10 records that are being reissued 20 times. How many times do I need Jennifer Warren's reissued? Do you know what I'm saying? Supertramp, the original is great. Streaming, I hate to say it, I love analog, and I will always support analog. But it's not the next generation's interest. There's a small community of boys, children, whatever, that are rediscovering. Their retention level is 60 to 90 days before they played their father's record, listen to it. You know what they love? The cover, the artwork. They love the tactileness that we loved, but they don't want the record.
There's a new
They
survey,
just want
the
the cover.
RIAA just did a survey about
Yeah.
all of this. It just came out yesterday, 2 days ago, and I posted most of the findings. Everything you're saying is not, it's partly true, but young people are the ones that are buying the records and playing. The percentage of kids
All
who are
12 of them, I
No, millions, millions and millions. Turntables, you have the numbers of Audio-Technica inexpensive turntables, the sales numbers would absolutely floor you.
Well, I think her point is the sales are there, and yes, the records are selling, and I'll tell you, I have 12-year-olds in my life that have got a turntable for Christmas, my son wants one, they buy it, they use it, get it, but the 90% of their listening is still streaming.
Yes, but most people here.
So you're
how many-
both saying
How many
correct
people
things.
here have Tidal or Cobas and stream a lot of music?
Right.
Me too. That's not going to change. What has to change is how they're streaming on, or what their systems are that they're listening on. And so, to me, streaming is actually a great opportunity
Yes.
for us to increase our industry.
Yes.
And I mean, with the turntable things, just getting the knowledge that there's separate things, there's
Okay.
separate components,
Right.
like that's a thing, it's a step.
We have to, and I'm guilty of some of this. High-end isn't audio. That is audio. There's entry level, that's the inclusiveness of a NAD system, a PS, a NAD receiver with a pair of PSP speakers. I'll support Paul Barton there. But the point is, get that out there. Get the $1,000, $1,500 system and say, that's just as important as the Krell amp.
Of course it is. It is. That's the gateway drug.
And I think that piece is missing. We can't leave audio to Amazon.
It's
The
fun, it's
problem is,
funny.
any retailer will tell you, especially in the New York area, they cannot make a profit on that level of product, so they don't sell it because they can't make any money on it.
Not everything has to have a profit margin. We're building a future. If we care about our future and our industry, I care. I won't be here, but I care that the industry has people in the audience.
There's good points in both aspects here, because I remember walking down the hallway and somebody that Michael worked with, and still works with in a way, had his iPod with him, and he's like, "This is gonna destroy us. It's MP3s, they sound horrible. It's gonna kill our industry." And I said, no. This is gonna create a new generation of music lovers. And music lovers wanna reproduce music better than they usually have, right? But, to Mike's point, it's about as good as we're doing right now. People getting back into vinyl, right? It's something. And it's not super significant, nor is it insignificant, but it's something that's re-engaging the population that we're trying to reach in the way that Angie's talking about. So both like building the audience through digital, trying to grab attention of younger people, we've got two good things going on here, I
And I
think,
think
right?
making it accessible, right? Like, I was not allowed to use my dad's stereo, right? I was not allowed to touch it. It was, you can listen to it when I'm doing it. Our son can pick up an iPad and he can pull up Cobas and he can crank the stereo whenever he wants. And can he touch the turntable and the albums without me there? Hell no. Like, no. There's none of that. But he can listen to music whenever he wants. Anytime of awake hours, and he does. He told us the story that he's at our house and we weren't there, and he's out in the front yard playing basketball, and the door was open and he had music just blaring. And the neighbors came over and told him to turn it down. And we're cracking up because we never would have touched our dad's stereos when we were 12. And he's telling on himself, right? Like he said, the neighbors came over and yelled at me. And, you know, just like, you know, a race car driver would probably pat his kid on the back for getting a speeding ticket, we were just like, yeah, neighbors told you to turn down the stereo, that's awesome. But I didn't say that. I was like, oh, that's nice. Okay, did you turn it down? Okay, good.
Let me give you the hard numbers. Here's the hard numbers from the RIAA. An estimated 18 million consumers aged 13 and older purchased vinyl during 2021, a 27% increase over the significant COVID impact of 2020. Among buyers of vinyl over the past year, 71% purchased new records and 67% bought used ones, and 95% of vinyl buyers expect to continue buying. More than 1 in 3 buyers, 38%, have been purchasing vinyl for more than 10 years and value the authenticity of the sound, blah, blah. Collecting vinyl is also quite popular. 16% of purchasers buy records to strictly own them, while 21% buy them to collect and listen, so that's good. The numbers in this survey are absolutely, I mean, they're big numbers. It's 18 million people buying records. It's
What
not
teen magazine was that published in?
Not
Actually, there was one thing I wanted to.
Mike,
One thing
I
I wanted
love
to.
you. When I play analog, and I'm sure it's the same with you, I get a bottle of wine and a nice crystal glass, and I make an appointment for 2 to 4 hours with my analog. And with a friend maybe, or mostly solo, but that's where we get grouped together and we share our latest find on a vinyl. What's that, once a month if we're lucky? It's reality. We need to accept this. I will have an appointment, an intimate one-on-one with my vinyl. It's great, and it's great to share with a person who's of the same mind. But I'm not going to force somebody to sit and listen to my record.
Of course not.
Okay, because it's the best thing since sliced bread, and it's the only thing that makes you high-end. No way, Jose.
Who does that?
We're gonna have fun. Yeah, but you know, sometimes people are polite and say she gets off on it, so I must too, right?
Okay, so let's go to the last question. 30 seconds, everybody, right? Put on your thinking caps, look at your crystal ball.
I try thinking, but nothing happens. Okay.
What's going to propel the industry over the next 5 years? 30 seconds.
Streaming is going to propel people to listen to more music, consume more music, hear better sounding music, and then perhaps investigate getting better equipment. Also, peer-to-peer pressure, people talking to each other, because the industry's not doing anything to advertise itself, so that's what's going to do it.
Jeff?
Better music.
Okay, Angela?
Making it accessible and easy to use and easier point of entry.
Walter?
Creating awareness to a wider audience.
And Angie?
I'm gonna find my way to find myself at 20 again.
Okay, that's a good way to end up.
Okay, so let's thank everybody for their contributions. We have time to take a few questions from the audience. So we have a mic over here, so whoever has some questions for our panel, you could step up to the mic and ask your question.
Michael, you rattled off some production numbers, some capacity numbers in the United States on new onboarding record production. You probably have these numbers off the top of your head, which is why I'm asking. I don't mean to put you on the spot. But at capacity, when that capacity is fully online, what does that represent as a percentage increase in U.S. capacity for record production? Ballpark figure.
Anybody else want to answer that?
I don't know the answer to that either, but it's, right now, we produce an album, and it's, gosh, what are we at? 1.5 year turnaround time at this point. All of those things coming on board will help get stuff out faster.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy. We have one album that we produce as it sells basically, and it's taking 18 months to 2 years just to get it
by
pressed.
September, it's going to open up by September. All these pressing plants are opening. These are real things. Plus, there are 2 other things that I know about that I can't even talk about that are major. So it's going to get much, much better. As long as they can find the nickel to do the plating, because there's a nickel shortage now because of the war in Ukraine. But that's a whole nother story.
Okay,
That's true too.
Hi, John from Missouri. Quick question. So I find this very interesting medical field. You ask experts and people who are industry leaders, where do you see money being invested in the future of the high end? Where do you see the most dollars going? Because that tends to reflect where the industry predicts the future is going to be.
I think I know what you're asking. When you talk about the future of high end, it could be investment in sound quality, making things sound better. It could be investment in use case scenario products that fit a mold, gaming systems, desktop systems, things like that. And then, of course, we've broken it down and we're talking quite a bit about the marketing of the future of what we're trying to do. So as a company, our expenditures are fairly equally distributed, right? We're certainly investing in making our products better, more reliable, better sounding. We certainly are going to be, and we are initiating, embarking on our plan, which has a lot of the elements that we've discussed here today in terms of reaching out to different audiences and different people. And product development, where we want to be relevant, not just to two-channel audio people. We need to be relevant to home theater. We want to be relevant to gamers. We want to be relevant to people who want to have a little system desktop hooked up to their computer. So I would say we're probably focusing the biggest amount on product development for sound quality, marketing, and then for use case scenarios in terms of development. Does that answer your question at all?
It does. It's sort of like when you ask a park valve company, where are you investing your money? It's in a particular type of valve, so you know that the entire medical industry is looking in that forward direction. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so you're talking about product specifically, and I think that to be able to have products that adapt to the changing and evolving times of how people use them, and just continuing to make them sound better and be more reliable would be the short answer to that.
Okay. I don't see it as a disruption. I see it more of a refinement as far as where we're spending our money.
Jeff was saying he wants there to be better music, and of course we all like better music. But one thing I've noticed is that the quality of recordings has gotten better. It was getting really bad for a while. There was a 10-year period of you couldn't listen to anything. But now there are some really good young producers who know good sound, who read our magazines and know our industry, because I talk to these people and they talk to me. And they know what good sound is, and they know what good recordings are, and they're making much better recordings now. And if you haven't heard any of those, I'll give you some. This guy named Dave Cobb works in Nashville, get some of his records. Brandy Carlisle's latest record sounds great.
Okay, next question.
Hi, Jack Williams here, and thanks for the panel discussion. It's really interesting, and everyone here you succeeded in making us envy you.
That's sad.
All these thousands of words you've spoken on high-end audio, the future of, and I didn't hear one word that was a proper noun, Atmos. Now you had 48 kilohertz, which is medium res, right? Oh yeah, right, and maybe 12 speakers that act independently. How come? No Atmos.
Not a fan. No, don't need it. 2 speakers properly set up to listen to the most music that's been made over the past 100 years. Sounds fantastic. I just don't. My wife won't let me put speakers in the ceiling anyway.
I think the marketing challenge for things like Atmos is an experience that people connect with and want to experience. So this was the same problem, for those of us who've been around long enough, SQ versus QS versus CD4. Yep. Back in the 70s, 4-channel, there you are, okay. I remember the move from mono to stereo. Well, okay, anyhow, in there needs to be a compelling experience that people go, oh yes, that's what I want. And so, perhaps in film, I can see that for Atmos, but I'm not seeing it in music. There may be stuff I just haven't experienced it myself.
Bert Stein and Van Curry on sets with that, of Atmos.
Okay.
They sound better.
I'd like to say something about that. And when we talk about the future of high-end audio, audio's audio. We are in the business of home theater as well. So it's not that Atmos did not come up, but audio to me means 2-channel reproduction and multi-channel reproduction, right? So we didn't also talk about just stereo and, surround sound in general, but audio is audio. Now, personally at home, my 2-channel music system is a heck of a lot more important to me than the Atmos system I have set up there. I do have one, but I find myself sitting in front of it, spinning vinyl quite often. But Atmos is certainly in our vernacular, and home theater is a big part of our business.
I'm going to say something about home theater and audio as well. I think home theater, we think of, we're in the dark. There are 20 people, but we are alone. And we really don't share the experience till the theatrics is over. With 2-channel audio, we are experiencing it moment by moment. Did you feel that? Did you hear that? So when we hear a track, it's shared. In a home theater with 2-channel people, it's a shared experience when everything's done with, two hours later, an hour and a half later. So we want audio, it's a daylight, and home theater's a night kind of thing.
I don't know how many of you read Architectural Digest, but they had a big cover story just recently called "The Next Big Thing in Homes is the Listening Room." Not the home theater, it's the listening room. Because that's the shared room where people get together and sit around. And that's what kids are doing that now. They sit around, they play records, and they talk to each other, and they don't sit in the dark and watch a movie. And the movie room, people don't use it as much as they used to use it, because it's like this cold room.
Because they're realizing they lost their
Community.
touchy-feely moments.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So this is a great opportunity for our business to get involved. How many people in our business have reached out to Architectural Digest and said, hey, look, we can talk to you about what should go in this room and how it can fit in this room, and hey, let's advertise at Architectural Digest. How many have done that? I bet you not.
But it's the same thing that we say audio's come above ground. Because early when we were doing audio, we were relegated to the basement. It wasn't real world. So now audio's come above ground. It's in our living room and it looks really nice. And home theater took over what was our audio 2-channel system, because we want to live with the audio.
That's right.
And we want to isolate with home theater below ground.
Interesting. Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Randy Wilson, and I am one of the old-timers here. I've been in this business since 1967, so I've seen it go full circle. And I wanted to agree with Walter on something. Education is a big factor of what we need. One thing I did when I was on the sales floor was educate the consumer on how to listen and what to listen for, because they don't know. A lot of people come in and say, well, I can't hear the difference. Well, did you listen to this? Did you notice the placement in that sound? Did you notice how the stage was? The instruments were all across. Oh yeah, I get it. So until we get that instilled back in the listener, we're gonna have trouble. And we're gonna need to find a way to teach people how to listen again.
You're here.
I think everybody that reviews audio tries in their audio reviews to express that experience, to say, I listened to this record and I heard that there, I heard that there, and I heard whatever detail, and people would respond to that and say, I have that record, I never noticed that, thank you for pointing it out. And we try to do that.
Manufacturers used to do much more sales training, dealer training. That doesn't happen at all anymore. The dealers used to have organizations that were
Wait,
para.
Maybe one more, and then we'll call. Okay, one more.
Only one person answer.
Yeah, thank you. Class.
So you guys at the very end started talking about streaming, and just looking at statistics on the way in on the plane, we're around 600 million people now worldwide on streaming platforms.
So I guess what I would want to know as audio equipment and manufacturers and enthusiasts, the notion that on the servers or the serving side of the music, Qobuz, Tidal, Spotify Premium, they're doing a better and better and better job of getting their bit rates up and their quality up, but their transmission, still in your case, when your son's playing Qobuz on your stereo, he's probably using Bluetooth, right? Or how's he getting it to your stereo?
Broom.
Huh?
Broom.
With Broom, okay, that's another good example. So my question is, it seems to me there's a huge opportunity in the equipment world, in the audio equipment world, to be advancing the capabilities of getting from your device to your existing system. And I'm just here to say Bluetooth isn't it. We all know that Bluetooth isn't it, and I'm being self-serving because we have developed the technology that isn't it. But I want to know, is that part of your future plans? I hear you saying, let's make the equipment sound better, but is part of that plan to go, how do we, if we're going to embrace these 600 million people that are streaming for convenience off their devices, is part of that plan, how do we get the signal coming into my equipment better? Is that part of your existing plan? Anybody? Any of the manufacturing side?
Yes. The last product that we introduced is a Root endpoint.
Okay.
It will unfold all of the layers of MQA. It does Qobuz, Tidal, Spotify, Pandora. And it connects up to your network, right?
Yes.
So it's not relying on Bluetooth. Now, we do have a Bluetooth connection capability if you want to utilize that as well,
Right.
But you can hook it directly up to your network.
Yeah, I just kind of, it's always kind of caught me off guard that you would have this really high-end capability on the server side of that serving side of music, and maybe a high-end system that it's going to, but getting it from where one to the
Yeah,
other.
it's got a DAC built in,
Yeah.
so it's a DAC streamer, does all of the above. Any products that we have that we consider in our lifestyle range and or home theater oriented and, desktop, we'll be incorporating that into everything moving forward.
Okay, cool.
Okay, well, I think they're telling us we're getting the hot
Yeah, we're
side.
getting-
But thank you, everyone. Thank you.